Now switch gears. We want to talk matters South Sudan. And a couple of days ago, a travel advisory issued by the government warned Kenyans to avoid traveling to South Sudan, especially parts of the greater Upper Nile. I have a whole list here that I'll not read, but this list was provided by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. The travel advisory came a day after two Kenyan pilots captured by Akobo local authorities under the SPLA opposition were released after paying an 11 million Kenya shilling ransom. In addition, late last year, 4 Kenyans were jailed for life in South Sudan for allegedly defrauding the Juba government and were released following talks between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Salva Kiir. Joining me in studio to talk a little bit about the relationship between Kenya and South Sudan is His Excellency, the South Sudan Ambassador to Kenya, Chol Ajongo. Welcome to the program, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Many thanks indeed for finding time to be here with us. Very quickly, Two or 3 days ago, the Kenyan government issued a travel advisory warning its citizens to avoid traveling to certain parts of your country. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I think I'm just going to repeat myself. I had a similar interview yesterday or 2 days ago, and about the same. I said clearly in that interview that Kenya as a government definitely has its own rights to advise its citizens not to go to certain places, but I said the areas covered by the travel advisory were too broad. I strongly believe that all Greater Upper Nile is not that risky, according to what I've seen, and including also other places like Ye River. There are no significant security issues that are there, but also it was covered by the Minister of Foreign Affairs travel advisory. And I also said clearly that, you know, crimes can happen anywhere. It depends where you are. If you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can definitely get into trouble.
And you believe this is what happened to...
This is what happened because the two individuals who landed in the area which is controlled by the rebels, the government could not access them because we are in ceasefire. If not because of the ceasefire that we have agreed, as a result of peace process which is taking place now, the government could have access to those places and rescue them.
Excellency, you might be talking about the realities on the ground, but let's talk about perception. There's a section of Kenyans that feel that Kenya has done a lot for South Sudan. But when Kenyan citizens get into trouble in South Sudan, they don't feel that the South Sudanese government goes out of its way to protect Kenyan citizens. And that perception might be what is fueling this current discussion we're having at the moment. You say on the ground, you can be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you know, this is being blown out of proportion. But what are we going to do about the perception that the South Sudanese government does not worry too much when Kenyan citizens find themselves in trouble in your country?
It's interesting that you are using a very good term, perception. Perception tested against realities, it could be a perception. It could not be true. I could argue that...
Although perception spreads faster than reality.
Of course, of course, because it's a perception. A perception is not a reality, definitely. It's something different. But as we speak, I know where I come from. There are so many Kenyans that are still way, way deep in South Sudan, far north, central South Sudan. There are no cases about them. And if it is perceptions also, there must be... We have a lot of perception also in South Sudan that South Sudanese also are getting troubles here in Kenya. And there are quite a number of cases. I'm not going to talk about them here.
You're not going to talk
I'm not going to talk about them. I know we had cases where South Sudanese, you know, as I rightly said, you get into trouble where you are, you have problem with police sometime. Recently, like in December last year, we had South Sudan was killed and burned alive here in an area.
Killed and...
The guy was burned. You know, he was found a young man.
Okay.
He was with some friends, and the following day he was picked up on the ground.
Okay.
And this cannot create a perception that Kenyans or Kenyan government is not protecting South Sudanese. And that's why I insist these are isolated cases. And I strongly believe South Sudan and Kenya had a lot in common. We strongly believe that Kenya, for most South Sudanese, is a second home. We help each other. And of course, during difficult days, Kenya was there for us. And I also believe that Kenya also benefited from where we are as South Sudan. I mean, talking from 2005 up to where we are, 2013, quite a number of Kenyans speak up businesses in so many sectors in South Sudan. And I think Kenya also, to be fair...
You said the majority of them are doing okay. They are safe where they are. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the PS nominee for Foreign Affairs and International Trade being vetted by one of Parliament's committees. I believe that's Ambassador Michael Kamau. And he stated, when asked about Kenya's relationship with South Sudan and the incidents that we've had, whether it's the 2 pilots, whether it's the 4 gentlemen that stayed in your jail for some time, And he was asked what needs to be done about that. And he said he backs the advisory. Enough is enough, were his words. Again, you feel that he's taking out of context? You feel that that's not the right approach?
I'm not going to discuss what PS nominee Kamau said in the parliament.
Although you'll be dealing with him.
I'll be dealing with him because I thought when he goes to the parliament, definitely he wanted to defend his positions and he wanted to be nominated. Definitely, that's a different story. I'm not going to discuss it here. But I think when it comes to Kenyans that were in jail, I also have a number of South Sudanese who are in jail in Kenya. And I'm not going to question the legal proceedings or judiciary of the Kenyan judiciary.
So Kenya should also not question the legal process.
Exactly, because there's a jurisdiction. So when you commit a crime in a certain jurisdiction, that a jurisdiction of that country should be able to try you. And I fully understand that. We have cases of South Sudanese as we speak now, a number of 2 or 3 people, South Sudanese who were accused in Kenya because they happened to be in Kenya as the legal requirements judicial would require. They were actually tried in Kenya. They are in prisons. I'm not going to go into test what were the charges and whether it were a fair trial or not. That's something else. But the 4 Kenyans were caught, and there was a case, proof against them, and they were afterward let go. This is again a different story. The presidential pardon as a result of a discussion between the 2 heads of states, they were let go. But this is that it doesn't infringe into the fact that they were part of a criminal organization that defrauded the government of South Sudan.
You've actually preempted my next question, which was to be, again, what is the level to which the judiciary in South Sudan is independent, can operate on its own without government or opposition interference? And again, how strengthened is the judiciary? Again, it's a big discussion in our country about how independent our judiciary
Definitely.
can be. If it also is a big discussion in your country,
it is.
Then could that worry Kenyans living there that they might not get a fair trial?
It is a big discussion in whole Africa. I've been in Kenya for 1 year, and I've followed so many cases in the judicial. There's so many cases being tried. I am, again, not going to pass judgment on Kenyan judiciary system. I'm not also going to pass judgment on whether Kenyan judiciary is dependent or not. I leave it for you as a Kenyan. But as a diplomat, this is not my role to discuss. If I want to discuss it at all, it could be a totally different area, arena, not here.
Not here, not on a national TV station.
Yes.
So what are you doing to ensure that the travel advisory is lifted as quickly as possible? What are you doing now? Because that's your job here.
Well, I'm not doing that much. What I can do is that I can tell you is that South Sudan is safe. There are places that are safer. It depends on the Kenyans, what you're looking for as a Kenyan. If you are doing business, because again, I said this, where I come from, that the whole of Greater Barakazal, most part of Upper Nile, because the travel advisory that was issued, first of all, we were not consulted. And actually some of the areas and I told them that, if you want Kenyans not to go, they take visa from us. We can tell them where not to go. While in Juba, you have the Kenyan embassy that they can also consult to be advised which areas that they should. But it's not a blanket coverage as it came up in the travel advice that was issued. Okay.
Yeah. So can you tell Kenyans living in South Sudan and those who want to go do business that as long as they follow the law, the constitution, that they have nothing to worry about?
That would be just a simple question, the same thing that I'm telling South Sudanese when you are in Kenya. Respect. Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for finding time to be here with us and for putting that matter on record. And we have to wait and see how this pans out. Of course, what the position of our Foreign Affairs and International Trade Ministry will be moving forward. But for now, they say the advisory still stands and they've warned Kenyans against traveling to certain parts of the country. But nevertheless, the ambassador here in studio says some Sudanese in Kenya are facing their own challenges and they could also...
South Sudanese.
Sudanese who live in this country.
South Sudanese.
South Sudanese living in this country could also face the same challenge as well. And he has given us his views on the same. Your Excellency, thank you so much for finding time to be here with us. Let's take you now to Orange.